This episode is brought to you by HighSpots.com. HighSpots.com is the leading provider of professional wrestling and mixed martial arts merchandise. From wrestling boots to wrestling DVDs, wrestling action figures to title belts, HighSpots.com has the largest selection of wrestling merchandise. Go there right now with our link, tinyurl.com/STS HighSpots. STSHIGHSPOTS. Shop there with that link. It won't cost you any extra, but it will help support this podcast.
Have you listened to episode 42? That's right. Who wants to be the best Shiznitter ever? Hey, guys, I'm looking for contestants. Do you think you could win on Who Wants to be the best Shiznitter ever? Well, email me, inbox me on Facebook, or DM me on Twitter. And you could be on Who Wants to be the best Shiznitter ever? Here's a clip. Listen to it now and download the episode.
Your 75 seconds is up, and we're going into the final round, round 5. And Matthew, you get to choose the subject.
Okay, well, let's say if I could turn one guy.
If you could turn one guy as the subject, you're going to have 75 seconds to talk about it. If you could, or the question is, if I could turn one guy, it would be, if you could turn one guy gay in the WWE, who would it be? Give us the gimmick, give all of it. Shoot the shit as much as you can in these 75 seconds.
I've got the perfect answer for this. It's so obvious. You would have Braun Strowman play a homosexual character. And it wouldn't necessarily be played for laughs. Just one day you slowly reveal that, hey, he's got a boyfriend. Maybe it could be a guy who looks similar to him. Maybe it's a guy who's a little more feminine to him. It doesn't really matter. You could have people get offended by it or mock him for it, and he just kicks the ever-living shit out of them. Because it's perfectly okay for him to be gay, and it's not a bad thing. And anyone who shit-talks him or looks down on him, he just fucking destroys. And he would stay over because he's a monster, and the fans want to cheer him. And by putting him in that role, it makes you even more sympathetic. He would be the baby face that people would want. You know, they want to cheer Braun Strowman, and that would give them a legitimately great reason to cheer him. And think about how WWF would look for 5,
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's start the party.
Hey, welcome everyone live from STS Studios in St. Louis, Missouri. It's a new episode of Shooting the Shiznit. I hope everyone's doing good. Thank you everyone for last month's downloads. It's the second most downloaded month ever in the history, and we do appreciate it. I got a big shout out to Lance and everyone that listens. We do appreciate it. Also, everyone that plugs the episodes, Bob McGee, Gene Jackson, Sean Garmer, we do appreciate it. Everyone retweeting, Brain Last, there's tons of names. Jamie Ward, everybody that happens to retweet or tell a friend about our podcast. This episode is also in our Let's Talk Shiznit on the Dirt Sheet series. You guys will enjoy this one, and I just mentioned his name, but Jamie's been a friend of mine for years, and you guys are going to really like this one. Hey, you can reach me at Comic Book Mark BT on Twitter, BT Shooting the Shiznit on Instagram. We have a Shooting the Shiznit Facebook page. We also have the Cool Kids Wrestling and MMA Facebook page. You got to ask to go in that. If we don't like you, we'll kick you out. We also have T-shirts, guy. We have the logo T-shirts. We have I'm a Shiznitter T-shirt. A bunch of spoof shirts there at wearemerch.com. Go to wearemerch.com. Only $12.99, guys. And what you'll do is you'll go and look for the Shooting the Shiznit store. $12.99 for regular size. We have sizes all the way up to 6X, guys. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, Pod Paradise, Spreaker, iTunes, did I mention iTunes, and SoundCloud. And I want to give a big shout out to my buddies over there at Suplex City Limits, Creative Control with JoJo, Who's Right Podcast, P3 Radio, and a shout out to Keeping It 100 Patreon site, guys. For just $1 more, you'll get a lot of extra material there. So check out Keeping It 100 Patreon site. Hey, I think it's time. Is it? Now, let's get on with the show. Hey, we're going to bring my guest today, and this is truly my old buddy. He is one of my old buddies, all the way from Eaglestown. How about that? I even put your Eagles over. Can you believe that? Jammie Ward. Come on, Jammie. Come from the green room. Jammie, I want to know before we go any further, did they have everything you wanted in the green room there?
Excuse me, Brian. I got to get that cheesesteak out of my mouth. Hold on just a second. An authentic Philadelphia cheesesteak, you can't beat it. And you spared no expense by having it flown down here to the STS studios.
There we go. See, guys, when you come to STS studios, we get treated like a gentleman, a Southern gentleman, because I'm a Southern gentleman here. Jammie, we've known each other longer than I'd like to admit.
Way back when, all the way back to, if my math is correct, back to 1987. Might even be 86, but I think it was 87 we actually first met in person, but I think we were talking on the telephone back in the 86.
Right. And that, now when I talked to Jeff Jarrett, we talked about that Memphis, where we had people from Philadelphia come in. You were on that trip, right?
Absolutely.
And you remember those matches just as good as I do. And then something that people don't know, we have kind of a behind-the-scenes things that go on here. Jammie is part of the Shiznit Council that I always talk about. And Jammie has listened to every episode that we put out, and he's one of those guys. I sit and listen to a lot of podcasts, Jammie, and people just, the guests say, I wish somebody would be honest about my podcast. I wish they'd tell me what they thought. And you're that guy for me. You're one of those guys that sends me a note every time you get done and say, hey, that sucked. Hey, I liked it. Hey, I can't hear you. Hey, you're talking too loud, or, just things that I need to know. So we do appreciate that. But we're going to get right into the show. And I want to talk about, first we want to talk about when you become a wrestling fan. What was it that turned you on to wrestling, and in live events and such like that. But let's just start with the little Jammie Ward. What turned you on to wrestling?
The little Jammie Ward got turned on to wrestling, I want to say around 1974, 75. I have a half brother that lives in Wilmington, Delaware, and he used to come up for weekends every now and then, and he would watch wrestling. And just from him watching the wrestling, I started to watch a little bit. And but I never went out of my way to watch it. If it was on with him, I sat there and watched intently. And, as time went on, probably around 1977, we first got cable television. I live in the suburbs right outside of Philadelphia, and we got Prism, the Philadelphia in-home regional sports and movie network. And at that time, they were just beginning to show the Spectrum cards live on Prism. And that kind of is what hooked me into it. I just, was fascinated by it. And, to this day, I still watch every week.
And you said the Prism shows, they actually they were showing the live arena shows from Philadelphia, from the Spectrum?
Yes.
Now, would they show the
arena shows?
Would they show the main events, or were they just showing the undercards and everything?
It was the entire card. Now, for the first couple years, if there was a cage match, they wouldn't show the cage match. They would do highlights of past Spectrum shows. But yeah, they would show the entire show. Matter of fact, the one cage match they did air, which was the first one I saw, was I'm sorry. It was the Superstar Billy Graham Bruno cage match 2 days before Backlund won the belt. And Superstar kicked him through the door. They actually showed that cage match, but after that, they didn't air the next couple cage matches.
Wow. So that's, and there's something I'm doing off the subject here, but Bruno was never one of those, and I don't want to piss off anybody from the north, but he never was over with me. But you were right there in the midst of it. Was he someone that was just, tons over with you when he was in there with Superstar Graham?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I was a little bit younger than, a year or two before that, whenever I would watch on TV and Bruno came on, my half-brother explained to me the importance of Bruno. And to me, Bruno was a mythical figure. And like when he came back in, was it early 85 or in 84 to do the announcing, and then he started working the Spectre matches with David in the tag team matches, it was just awesome to see Bruno live again after like a 4-year hiatus.
I guess not living up there and, not getting on a weekly basis, I probably will never understand the appeal of Bruno. So I seen him on.
I didn't get the appeal of Southern wrestling from just reading it through the magazines either. It wasn't until I got exposed through TBS and started trading tapes that I was able to appreciate guys like a Tommy Rich or a Jerry Lawler or somebody in Florida like a Dusty Rhodes. I really didn't appreciate them like I should have.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's just me. I could do a whole podcast on me and Bruno. So I actually worked on I helped somebody work on a book with Bruno. Also, just everything I've heard about the guy is true. He's just a true gentleman, but never was over with me. And John McAdam will hate us there during that, or hate me at least. Jammie, we're going to talk about the squared circle, but did you start the squared circle during this time, or was it after you kind of started? Because you got a fun little stories there where you actually hung around a lot of the guys in the business that was in the Philadelphia area there. I mean, I can mention your name to a guy like Jim Cornette, Bobby Eaton. Those guys are going to remember you. But during that time, was the squared circle in between becoming a fan and being able to ride around with the guys, or were you still doing the squared circle while you were backstage and everything?
Oh no, I'm still doing the squared circle then. I started doing it back. I want to say, my memory. I'm like you. I'm old now. The memory's starting to fade a little bit. But I believe I started doing the squared circle like in late '82, early '83. And I was still in high school when I started it. And basically how I got involved with it was, the old Kaiser magazines, Wrestling Review, Wrestling News, they had the advertisements in the back for like people trading the videotapes, those that just wanted to talk to fans in other areas, not like the After magazines where it was the pen pal, but they actually had, what's the words I'm looking for? Classifieds almost in the back of those magazines.
Right,
and I started writing to some of the people, and I started trading. Started out by trading results of like what happened in Philadelphia, or even off the television. I gathered like a nice little network of different people, and I said, hey, what the hell? Why don't I start a newsletter? I had already gotten Norman Dooley's Weasel World on a pretty regular basis, and there was another guy out of Georgia, and I can't remember what his name was. It was Georgia Wrestling News, and they were only charging like 25 cents in a self-addressed stamped envelope to get the issue. So I basically just followed the same thing. I would write up whatever wrestling news that came into me, and then I would send it out to those people, and then I started advertising in the Kaiser magazines, and it started getting bigger and bigger, and then. As time goes on, like right before I met you, through a mutual friend, I met Dennis Caroluzzo, and that's how I got, the backstage access. Of going to the Philly Civic Center every month, and ended up meeting guys like Cornette and, Bobby Eaton, and as the subscriptions grew and grew, I had some guy named Paul Heyman out of New York who ran Wrestling Something International, and he ran a little newsletter, and we used to trade newsletters. Little did I know until that famous Memphis convention that was the same guy. I never put one and one together until that time.
Oh, wow. And that's, almost every one of these, that we've been talking about, the dirt sheets. I wish I could get Paul on here because Paul was, he was doing stuff, trying to get his photography out as a kid, pretty much sending out stuff and exchanging news with people just like everyone else was. And the reason I knew who he was the first night he came into Memphis was because of that. I mean, he had a book that was printed up. Mainly, I wanted to see how he printed it. It was the weirdest thing, but I have photos too, so I wanted to print up my own photo book. So I gave him some money and sent off for it, and then Paul Heyman I believe it was Dangerly at first, and then Dangerously Live. I don't know. It was really crazy the way they named him 2 or 3 different names there. But yeah, and then when he came in, I knew exactly who he was and his name, and he was shocked. But he subscribed to almost every one of these sheets or dirt sheets that we're talking about. Almost every one of them we say, well, Paul was part of subscribing to everything. Now, you started in 82, and when you said you just gathered news from other areas and everything, people sent in stuff, how did you put together it was called the Squared Circle. I don't even know if we've even mentioned that since we got started. It was called the Squared Circle, and you put this all together, if someone sent you news from Georgia, Philadelphia, you put it all together. Now, did you type everything up, or did they send it to you typed, or was it handwritten? What was it?
Well, they would either send it typed or handwritten, but I used the good old typewriter that my father acquired in Guam in World War II.
Wow.
Type every one up. And then later on down the line, I got an electronic typewriter, so I was really, high class at that point. But the early stuff I typed up all myself, and then as time went on, I tried to do the monthly issues, but then as time went on, it just got to be really too much to be typing out everything. So at that point, I started more or less kind of like photocopying what other people were sending me and just putting that into the newsletter. And I think I got up to like 20 pages at once upon a time, except for the period where you became my partner on the Squared Circle, and we were putting out like a Bible every month.
It was crazy.
That's what it felt like to me, but between all the stuff that we were getting from everyone.
It was when we came together to do it. I got lucky and had a friend that had a word processor with ColecoVision. It was they sold a word processor, and his mother was going to write the Great American Novel, so she got the printer and the word processing program, and he let me go over there, and we, like you said, we ended up with all the people that I was sending stuff to, and then all the people that sent you stuff, putting everything together and typing it up. It was sometimes 30 to 40 pages, and I don't know how many issues of that we did, but it got tiring after a while because we was putting so much stuff together. But you had so you said 80, 82, 83. Now you weren't an Observer subscriber then. You weren't really a Smart fan at that point, were you?
No, I was in the well, actually yes, because I had started getting Daniel Billings, a guy out in Maine. I forget what his newsletter was called, but that was the first Smart newsletter that I got, and basically that's what Smart, just like you always say, you always knew it wasn't on the up and up, but you didn't know how it wasn't on the up and up.
Right.
So, I mean, I was always that fan, even back to, as a kid. But after seeing his newsletter and with the real names and guys, it was kind of like a predecessor to what Meltzer ends up putting out a year or two later. I forget when Meltzer started. But somehow somebody sent me a Meltzer, and I've been getting his, or I don't get any more, but I was getting his stuff back to maybe issue 7 or 8.
Oh, wow.
The big legal, the big legal size papers. Unfortunately, I don't have them anymore, and I kick myself for not.
Yeah, because that was, like I really believe that I started, like I said, there in the summer of, it would be summer 84, going to school and thinking that it was 84 or 80. I want to almost think it was 85. It could have been coming home from Christmas vacation and going to school, but I thought I was hot shit because I finally had someone tell me how it was going. A guy by the name of Dick Bourne, he smartened me up and sent me some observers and some other stuff. So, all right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to be right back with my old buddy Jammie Ward.
80s Tees is the leading online retailer of officially licensed t-shirts, specializing in retro movie, music, TV show, video games, comic book, and cartoon t-shirts. 80s Tees has you covered. They have everything from G.I. Joe, Seinfeld, and Back to the Future, as well as 152 different classic wrestling shirts. Plus, free shipping on all orders over $50. Visit them now at our link, tinyurl.com/STS80stees. That's tinyurl.com/STS80STEES. Visiting them at our link will cost you nothing extra, but it will help support this podcast. Now, back to the show.
All right, we're back with Jammie Ward. Hey, Jammie, you was talking about, and it just fascinates me. And one of the reasons I started this podcast, bring an old friend, own it and talk shit. That's pretty much what it was. But it fascinates me the way you put together the newsletter. I had my own story, but you said, now where did you go? I love JD's story. It was 100 miles to photocopy. But JD was in Mississippi. And Mississippi, don't get me started on Mississippi. But,
That's why they have the fake Philadelphia. Right?
That's right. So tell me, I mentioned the Eagles when we first started, but this tells you what the wrestling business is all about. We're able still to be friends, even though I'm a Cowboys fan and you're an Eagles fan. You can't beat that at all.
I forgive you for that. You're a legit Eagle. I mean, you're a legit Cowboy fan. You didn't have any choice. Who are you going to root for? The Saints? I mean, after all, I allow you to be a Cowboys fan. It's the cockroach Cowboy fans in the Philadelphia region who should be Eagle fans. Oh, you know what? That's a sidebar. Let's get back to wrestling. I could make a 45-minute podcast just out of forget it. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about putting the newsletter together. Where did you go photocopy it? How did we put it all together? And how many subscribers did we end up having?
Well, at the height, I think I had about 250 subscribers. In the beginning, it was slow. Again, I wasn't trying to make any money out of the deal. I was just having fun doing it. And so I would type it up, and then I would go to, back in the day, it was called Brother Dominic's Photocopy Service. And they were a national chain. They used to, show the monks and everything, and you'd go into their store, and the commercials used to have the monks behind the counter.
Oh, wow, I don't remember that, but that's hilarious.
Yeah. Brother Dominic's. I used them for quite a few years, and then I was working in a shopping mall, working security in the office, and I had some overnight shifts, so that came in handy. I was able to run them out of there for a while. And then finally, I just went and bought my own little machine, copy machine. It cost me like $500 at the time.
Oh wow, yeah, that's dedication there. I mean, especially back then with a photo, we didn't have to, printers. And like I said, that ColecoVision printer was just was something that a lot of people didn't buy. I mean, it didn't stay in business. ColecoVision didn't very long, but wow, you bought your own copier and was able to copy it there at your house, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Because I just started with the post office. I was still living home, and when you're young and you're making coin and you got nothing else to do with it, spend it on a photocopier.
There you go. What did you? That's a good. That just reminds me of something, and I haven't asked these other guys this question, but you just said you're living at home. What are your parents thinking about you doing a wrestling newsletter and you being this huge wrestling fan? What did they think of that?
My parents had no problem with it at all. My mom would watch Georgia Championship Wrestling with me every Saturday night at 6:05. My dad would take me to the shows a lot. First show I ever went to, I think it was in 1980 or 81, and my dad knew somebody that knew Gorilla Monsoon. And here he got his tickets at the Spectrum, and I'm thinking, seats from Gorilla Monsoon, we're going to be in the front row. They weren't in the front row, but they were about the first row behind the hockey boards where it was raised up, and they were just awesome seats. So Monsoon knew what he was doing. Why give a guy, front row where these are just perfect view? And and then when the NWA started to come into Philly in '85, my dad and I went for right up through '88 to every single NWA show. The way they looked at it was, I wasn't out drinking a lot, I wasn't doing drugs. I was following wrestling and staying out of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. The only match I ever remember watching with my dad was it was on Mid-South Wrestling, and I couldn't, for some reason, something was wrong with my television. I was in there watching a little black and white he always watched, and it was Ric Flair against. It was the DiBiase angle with Ric Flair where Murdoch turned on him on Mid-South, and my dad actually sat and watched that whole match with me, and afterwards he had to tell me it was fake. But that was my mother's the one that got me. Actually, the people across the street wanted us to go to wrestling with them on Friday night, and that's how it got me started in Blythe, Arkansas on a Friday night. The first match featured Wayne Ferris dressed up like the Kisser. So that he had kiss makeup, and he scared the shit out of me. And I was, 10 or 11 years old. And but, yeah, that's what got me started. But, doing a newsletter. Now, you did the newsletter. How many years did you actually do the newsletter?
About 8 or 9. I think I finally gave it up around 91.
And that's the question we always ask, and it's kind of like everything evolves into something different. But why did, and at some time we got married and everything, both of us did, so I wasn't doing a newsletter after that. But what made you quit doing the newsletter?
Basically, I didn't have the time to do it anymore.
Right.
I mean, even like, as you know, and others know, I was good friends with Dennis Carluzzo. So even after, I get married and everything, even that time wasn't as much. And I didn't go over to Jersey, to see him and go to all his shows anymore, or putting out the newsletters. I even slowed down on trading tapes. Life just happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason. That's the best reason I can give. The reason why I quit mine and selling tapes, and I mean, getting donations for tapes, not selling tapes, but getting donations. And I sold my tape collection to someone in Australia, which it's every time I say that, the only name that we think of is Dan Leonard, but it wasn't actually Dan. It was, and I can't even remember the guy's name, but he paid a humongous amount for me just to ship it over there. But it was like almost 800 tapes when it finally ended. But yeah, I think that's it. I think we quit. There was a loss of interest there for a little bit for me. But I guess for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been watching it, a little bit of it, at least, once a week, and then participating in when we started the Cool Kids Wrestling Group. It's something that I go to every day just to see what's going on. And with the podcast, it's almost like I'm doing a newsletter again. But we talk. Go ahead.
I kind of feel since this podcast, podcasting in general, the wrestling podcast and the Cool Kids site and reconnecting with so many people, I kind of rejuvenated as a wrestling fan.
Oh, yeah, because I noticed one time we were all watching, I think it was the Long Beach show, and you jumped in the last not this one that just happened, but the first one, and you jumped in, and, and you hadn't watched New Japan Wrestling probably in years. You jumped in, and that was something that you probably would have never done if it would have been for the group, so.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about Dennis a couple of times. Dennis was a friend of both of ours. You knew him better than I did, but I talked to Dennis a lot on the phone, and I don't think we can, me and you can't be on a podcast and finish it up without at least getting one really good Dennis story. And I'm gonna let you tell it, but because you probably got a better memory than me, but it was me and you. And I've told this on another podcast before, but not ever here, about the Domino's taxi driver, right? Me and you, and I don't know who else was in the car. I think it's me, you, and Dennis, is what I remember correctly.
you're going to have to refresh my memory.
All right, so
it rings a bell. I'm just drawing a blank at the moment.
So
Alzheimer's is kicking in here.
There we go. So we jump in the car there in Memphis at the convention. We're waiting on a Domino's pizza delivery guy. He brings a pizza to him, and Dennis says, "Look, I'll give you $20 if you." And I think me and you got in the car with the delivery guy. Dennis stayed at the hotel, took the pizza, and the delivery driver actually for $20 took us to get beer.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God!
We had to. We would have never done that in today's society because we don't know if we'd have gotten back. But we were young and dumb.
And that guy,
anything for alcohol.
It was that guy was driving like he was driving like 100 miles an hour through Memphis, and I was scared shitless. He got the. I wasn't of age, and I don't think you might have been, but I wasn't.
No. Yeah, I had just turned 21, so.
And he went in. He got out of the car. The Domino's guy did. Went in, got the alcohol, came back out, gave it to us, drove us back to the hotel, all for $20. So, and that was just the things Dennis would do. Anything when we talk about Dennis, that just a real funny, quick story that comes to mind in your mind.
My favorite Dennis story. I've told this on another podcast, but. My favorite Dennis story is we're going on a trip with Goodhart. I think it was in like 91. And Dennis didn't want to fly with the group of the wrestling radio morons, as he would put it.
Yeah.
And so he says, listen, man, ride down to the airport, catch Joel outside, get our plane tickets, and I'll meet you back down there at 10 o'clock. Because Dennis didn't want to fly like at a 7 o'clock flight. So I meet Dennis at US Air, Northwest, whatever the hell it was, and he says, "Listen, I'll get us on another flight. Don't worry about it." So he walks up to the ticket counter and says, "Listen, me and my associate here, we need to get to Memphis as soon as possible. We got to be on the next flight." And they're like, "Well, all the flights are booked, yada yada yada." Dennis says, "You don't realize who I am. I'm the world-renowned heart surgeon, Dr. Dennis Carluzzo. This is my assistant, Dr. Ward. We need to be there on the next plane." Well, he BS'd them enough. Not only were we on the next plane, we were in first class.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's...
As only Dennis could do.
Well, I was... overall, at that age, I could say I was shy. That's the best way I had a section of friends that were probably about 5 guys that were my friends. And when I was in a small high school, I just really didn't hang around anyone else. And Dennis, just opened my eyes out of what you could do to bullshit. We walked in a restaurant in Memphis. She was part of this crew, and that place was just packed. And Dennis wanted to get his food and leave. And he told a story, and I can't remember what the story was at the time, of why we needed our food and we needed it quick. And he told the waitress, there'd be a good tip or something. We got our food so quick, it was just crazy. And years down the line, I actually used that when me and my wife walked into a restaurant. I'm like, if you could get us our food quick, you got a good tip, blah, blah, blah. And we've got to be somewhere, and it actually worked. So, like I said, I knew I couldn't get on this podcast with me and you without a one or two Dennis stories. Hey, Jammie, I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you, man.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being my listener, my number one listener, and listen to everything we do. And I know it's improved through. You had to sit through the bad episodes. At least you'll have one good episode with you on it. We want to thank everyone that listens, especially last month. Oh, just unbelievable, guys. Thanks for continuing to listen.
I only had to wait. What was it? 98 episodes to finally get back on. You tried to get me for episode 2 or 3. I couldn't do it because I was in Disney World.
Right. Yeah, it was like it was like
it back.
It was a spur of the moment. I said, "What are you doing?" And you said, I actually messaged you. Said, "What are you doing? You want to do an episode?" He was like, "No, I can't. I'm at Disney World." I was like, shit, I'm more important than Disney World. Hey, guys, join us, same bad time, same bad channel, on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there. Love my mama. By the way, we didn't tell them, but you had a lot to do with that best little wrestling podcast in the business. So you
yes,
could
I did.
you could take credit for all of that.